there are a lot of dynamic duos in the NFL right now. Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes. But as of last year, there's a new one coming onto the scene. Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. They have brought life to the Tennessee Titans. And last year they made it to the AFC Championship. And this year, we're not sure because their defense has been a real question mark. But how far do you think Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry can take the Titans in the playoffs or even moving forward?
Well, you said it. The defense is definitely the concerning part of this team. You look at the numbers, they're 23rd in points allowed, 29th in yards allowed, 28th in rushing yards allowed. I mean, you look Sunday night, they made A.J. Dillon look like he was Derrick Henry in the wrong uniform. So the defense has been bad. There's no sugarcoating it. But when you look at the offensive side of the ball, I think they might be one of the most underrated units in all of football. You know, they're going to be about 100 yards in every spot away from having a 4,000-yard passer, a 2,000-yard rusher, and 2,000-yard receivers. Like, that is a very dynamic offense. And you saw last year when Derrick Henry got going, there are very few people in the league that can stop him. I think outside of the Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills are the only team that are clearly better than them. I think the Chiefs and the Bills are higher up than everybody else in the conference. But other than that, I think it's a pretty level playing field for anybody in the AFC. So I could see, depending on the draw, I could see the Titans going all the way to the AFC title game. Again, it just depends on who they play and what matchups they get. And Derrick Henry needs to be the same guy he was last season. He's shown it, save for Sunday, which was a fluke game, I think. And the Packers were able to focus on the run more because of the weather. The past few weeks, he's been great. And if he can stay at that same level, which I trust him to in the playoffs, they will be a tough matchup for anybody, except maybe the Chiefs or Bills, because those two teams are, I think, head and shoulders above the rest of the conference.
I said this earlier around week 3, week 2, when the Seahawks defense was historically bad and their offense was historically good. Like right now, I don't think the Titans can make it very far. They have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Their defense right now is 29th in total yards. They're only better than the Texans, Jags, and Lions. And that's not a company you want to be in. They're 28th in passing yards, 19th in rushing yards, and 23rd in points. So they don't stop the pass well at all. They're very bad at stopping the run, as we've seen with A.J. Dillon and what he did to them. The only thing keeping them afloat is the offense. Look, we know that Derrick Henry's phenomenal. He's third. Right now, the Titans are second in rushing yards. Derrick Henry has 1,777 yards rushing and 15 touchdowns. And as good as Tannehill has been, statistically, you look at his stats and you say, wow, he's having a great season. But they're 21st in passing yards amongst the whole league. So they're not some air raid offense. They're not going to light you up passing. And that's the concern. If you stop the run, can Ryan Tannehill win that game? I think he can versus some teams, but I don't put my entire faith on Tannehill. Even though I think he is a great quarterback, I just think this season the Titans are in a bad position. Last week, versus the Packers, they got Adoree Jackson back. He's back. So they're getting their guys healthy, but now that they got Jackson back, Jadeveon Clowney's out for the year. He's not coming back. And I think ultimately what's going to cost the Titans is the decision not to bring back Logan Ryan. I think Logan Ryan was a huge piece for them. You see what he's doing to the Giants. He went to the Giants. The Giants are one of the best defenses in the NFL. I know one player doesn't change the entire defense, but he sure does matter. And basically, you didn't re-sign Logan Ryan, and then you traded for Desmond King. Granted, it was a 6th-round pick. You know, you basically traded for Desmond King to fill that Logan Ryan role.
You could have had Logan Ryan without giving up a pick.
The Titans were in great position to just run it back and add some pieces. And they didn't do that. They didn't bring some guys back, and I thought they mattered. And it's going to cost them in the playoffs because this defense is so bad. I don't see them making it far at all.
Yeah, I would have rather paid Logan Ryan than paid Jadeveon Clowney for the output he's giving you this season. And I think that Logan Ryan would have been a much more important piece to this defense. You know, and clearly would have helped out with the passing game. Like you mentioned, you see what he's done with the Giants. He's been spectacular with them, and he earned himself a big payday there with New York. But I do think the defense is concerning. The reason I do give them a chance, a puncher's chance against pretty much any team in the AFC outside of those two teams that I mentioned, I think that all of those other teams in the AFC have holes. You know, the Steelers, I guess you would consider the next best outside of those teams. Although the defense is great, their offense has been. They seem to figure it out the second half against the Colts, but
not when Big Ben calls the plays. When Big Ben calls the plays, they're really good.
Is that what's going to happen in the playoffs?
I think it would.
It should.
I think it would.
But they should have done that sooner. And I wonder about that decision-making going into the playoffs. What are the Steelers going to be in the playoffs?
We talk about teams that if they can run the ball well, they can make it far in the playoffs. The problem with the Titans and that line of thinking is that you have to be able to run and get stops.
Yeah.
You know, the Titans can run the ball for 8 straight minutes and score, and they're going to give up 7 points in one, you know, because they're that bad. So it doesn't really matter if you're running the ball. All you're doing is getting your own offense tired because your defense is not on the field very long because they're getting scored on. So it instead of having the opposite effect of fatiguing the defense and then having the offense have less time, you're fatiguing your offense along with their defense as well. But ultimately, you need that energy because your defense is not out there getting stops. So I think that's going to cost them. And we've seen, I think, that loss to the Packers was eye-opening because we look at it on paper, they should have beat them. You know, your biggest strength is the Packers' biggest weakness. And you lost. I think some of that is due to the snow. I mean, nobody on the Titans is used to playing in snow. So that had a lot to do with it. But even then, I just think the AFC is really good. They can beat the Ravens, I think. I think they can beat the Ravens. The Steelers, I don't see it. The Bills, I don't see it. The Chiefs, I don't see it.
No, I don't give them any chance against either of those two teams, the Bills or the Chiefs.
So it's really going to be tough, but I just think because their defense is so bad, they won't make the AFC Championship like they did last year.
You just never know what Titans team you're going to get. You know, we've seen them go out and lose to the Bengals, and then we've also went out and seen them get great wins. You know, they beat the Colts this year, and I thought they looked really impressive in that game. So you just never know what Titans team you're going to get, I feel like. Some weeks they look like world beaters, and then some weeks they come out and they don't even look like the same team. So I definitely, like I said, don't give them any chance against the Bills or the Chiefs because I think if it comes down to a shootout, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are just on a different level offensively, and I would trust them through the air much more than Ryan Tannehill. But against any other team, you know, the Steelers looked good in the second half against the Colts. They looked very good in the second half against the Colts. So if that's what the Steelers are looking like in the playoffs, I would change my mind. But just because I don't know what the Steelers are going to be, and I have the Titans on that same playing field as all those wild card teams that I have getting in, it's just a hit or miss, I feel like, with almost any of those teams. The Ravens, I will say the Ravens have been playing better as of late, but we saw earlier in the season, they have holes that can be exposed. You know, you get Lamar Jackson, you stop him on the ground, you get him throwing the ball. It's been his kryptonite in the playoffs the last 2 seasons. And the Browns, Baker Mayfield, granted he didn't have his receivers. He showed against the Jets he can have a fluke bad game.
But they demolished Titans.
They did. And that's the thing. You just never know. There's been so many up and down teams in the AFC this year, and I think the Titans have been one of them. If you get them playing their best football, last season, I didn't think that they were an AFC championship team. I just thought they put together their best football for 3 weeks in January.
But that's because towards going into the playoffs, they were playing the great football. Like right now, they're not going into this playoffs with the same momentum. And you talk about the Ravens, they beat the Ravens, but the reason the Ravens went out and traded for Calais Campbell was to potentially stop a Derrick Henry in the playoffs. Calais Campbell is one of the best run stoppers. He didn't play. When they faced the Titans, he didn't play. So I think Calais Campbell on the field makes a much bigger difference than when they didn't have him because they got him to stop the run game.
Yeah, and I don't think it takes any rocket scientist to know Derrick Henry is the key. If Derrick Henry can have games like he had prior to the Packers game, they can hang with almost anybody. But if Derrick Henry is, clogged up like he was against the Packers, they don't really have a chance.